Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Okay, welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. Human rights is one of the most important talks we can actually have. When we start talking about human rights and lifting people up, we are talking about equality. Equality has nothing at all to do with tearing people down because they have a privilege, whether it is earned or unearned. Equality means lifting people up so that we are all at the same level, that all of our opinions are heard, and that all are welcome at the table to speak. As you know, that one of the sole motto of Depictions Media is everyone has a voice and everyone should be heard. It is a motto that has led to the conversation that you're going to hear in a little bit. One of the big issues is inclusion actually causing exclusion. Are we ruling people out under the guise of inclusion? Or are we going to welcome everyone without a condition? Say that everyone has a right to have a stake in the conversation in what's happening in our world today. We have a global economy, we have a global government, and we have global problems. Climate change is just a small piece of what some of our global problems are as the human race. In fact, in some ways, climate change could be a distraction from what some of the real problems are in our human society. A human society that keeps causing wars, keeps causing people to feel fearful and wanting to attack other countries. And while attacking those other countries, that they are striking out against those who are truly innocent. Instead of recognizing that people are innocent, we want to lump them into one category so that we can dehumanize them and strip away their rights to food, water, and medicine. That we strip away their homes and leave them with nothing but destruction and rubble. So, with all that in mind, I put together a panel of people that I know believe in true inclusion, believe in putting love and respect into our global society, that believe that bullying should be limited and help should be given to those who would bully so that they can release the fear that may be behind it. So we're going to hear from, in this panel, Catherine McCord. She is a human resources and human rights activist. Jan Barlow, who has built a business around helping people think their way around how they support our society, what they can do for our society with a better job fit. And human rights activists and trans activist Celia Daniels. So why don't we tune into the conversation and hear what we all said about what's happening with human rights today in our society. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Okay, so why don't we start off with each of you guys introduce yourselves to the show and tell a little bit about what it is that you do for our wonderful world. Starting with Celia.
Thank you, Michael, for that great introduction. It's such a joy to be among this amazing team here today. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, of course, during our conversations, is about the intersectionality that I have, and I'll also talk about the pro-love and the topics that are so passionate to my heart is DEI looking at it from a different context. My full name is Celia Cynthia Daniels. My pronouns are she and they. And I'm the CEO and founder of an organization called Rubicon Consulting. It's an LLC. What I do is I educate, I engage, and I empower organizations to be truly inclusive from the bathroom all the way up to the boardroom. I think it all says in that. So I'm just going to pause there. And of course, I'm an Asian Indian, I'm an immigrant. I will talk a little bit about that during our podcast, but I just wanted to pause and I want to just say thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Thank you.
So yeah, Jan.
Thank you, Michael. It's always great to be part of anything that you're putting together, and especially with great people like Catherine and Celia. So thank you. My name is Jan Barlow, and I'm the founder of Better Job Fit. It's a nonprofit that I started in 2009, and we're all about reimagine work and life. And so really my passion is around the deference over difference. My focus and experience was with behavior diversity. I was at the height of my career being a 10 on independence. Just give me the goal, I'll get to it, and we'll get the result. And then new boss who totally changed my job and really wanted to see me and my colleague resign and get rid of us and start with her own team. And unfortunately, that was a very enlightening experience that caused me to lose my hair and my palms to peel, but really brought up my passion to help people really stay in positions of strength. And so we started working with veterans and foster care alumni when we started. So that's really where our focus lies, in really bringing people together in an alignment with their strengths and collaborating, and deference over difference. So focusing on that respect piece that you mentioned in the beginning, and really not focused more on our differences, but more on the respect piece. That's important.
Yeah. Okay, and Catherine.
Well, thank you very much for having me. So I'm Catherine McCord, and I run an HR consulting organization that focuses on universal design, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that we make the organization inclusive and able to be effective for everyone that works there. I also do a lot of speaking and teaching internationally on the topic of neurodiversity, and have now founded a nonprofit called the Neuroverse. And we are hosting our first ever live mega neurodiversity summit in New York at Grand Central Station this August. We're very excited and proud about that. And I am very excited to be here with this group. And I am myself a neurodiverse 4 times over.
Okay, and Catherine, I believe that you sent me a link for that, and we'll for everybody listening, that will be in the show notes, as well as links for important links for both Jan and Celia to get back to their organizations. one of the first problems I ever ran into with the whole bullying thing is that the first thing that ever happened to me was when I was 5 years old and first went to school was I was isolated for looking the way I do, which leads me to inclusivity or inclusiveness, however you want to put that. How do we make everybody feel warm to join in? So
I think that you have to make it make sense to people. You know what I mean? And I think that language is very important around that. I've had a lot of conversations, including with Sharon Hurley Hall, who's a wonderful inclusion expert that I've done some projects with. She's fantastic. And we were talking about the importance of language. So, for instance, she doesn't say white privilege, she says unearned advantage. And that's her way of being very specific about the language being used. And so I think that's important. And then I think one of the biggest things that we have to do, and Jan's probably going to start smiling because I've taught this 5,000 times with her, is that we have to learn to break our own ego mechanism to respond with curiosity.
Huge.
So we have to teach from kids to adults how to recognize that naturally occurring ego mechanism. It's no shame. We all have it. And how to stop it in its tracks to respond with curiosity and with a focus on education, not a focus on self-defense and ego.
You know, and Michael, that to your point, Catherine, you and I have spoken about the power of words, and Celia, I'm sure that you're very, sensitive to that as well. Words have a vibration. That's not woo-woo, people. It's science. Mm-hmm. And the basic DEI, what's really has failed is the trainings of traditional DEI. The words that are used automatically puts other human beings, in some people, in a defensive mode, right? Automatically feel at a subconscious level defensive. So when you get into that fight or flight reaction, your physical hearing shuts down. So there's no learning happening there, right? There's no change behavior. So, coming, and it has a lot to do with also the person who's facilitating or teaching, right? What emotions or mindset are you coming from when you're trying to facilitate that environment of learning, to create or facilitate behavior change, environment change, right? Catherine and I are big on words. So to me, really understanding and being conscious of the words that you're using to facilitate change, you have to understand that if people are perceiving it as defensive, subconsciously, their hearing is shut down. That's just, again, it's biology. There's no going forward to have anything else absorbed. So I think when we get to really understand that, for people that are in that industry or any industry, when it comes to our words, you got to understand your words have power. Right.
Yeah, you said it beautifully. Michael, I'm so sorry you went through a lot of bullying back when you were a child, and unfortunately, these bullyings, it manifests in different forms today. One of the things that I always say is it's easy to educate people who are ignorant, but it's difficult to educate people who are arrogant. The type of people that I've seen in my life are mostly ignorant. They don't know what they're saying. They say the wrong things. They probably had a background where they want to prove themselves to be better than another person, and it manifests in different forms. But it's also important to look at the word inclusivity. And to me, inclusivity is like calling people to the party. Hey, Celia, come to the party. This evening we have a party. Oh, sure, I'll be there. Oh, I feel included. I feel so happy. Now I walk into the house and I see music there and someone's telling, hey, don't keep the glass there. And Celia, by the way, my mom is not very much, she's not very progressive. So there is a bathroom downstairs. If you don't mind using it, that will be great. It's in the basement. Now, that's the kind of inclusivity that we see in companies today. They want to recruit people, but they don't want to retain them. They want to look at compliance, but there is no compassion. There's a lot of things that are happening in our workplace today where, Jan, you talked about the toxic boss. The words they use, the behavior they had shown can cause a lasting
Yeah.
issue. And I have had such toxic bosses all through my life. And they were brown bosses, brown men whom I was working with. And what I've learned is it's important to have the words are amazing. And I just want to learn a lot more about that from both of you. But I also think it's so important for us to have that sense of belonging in the workplace, which is missing out. Companies are treating people like commodities. We are
Oh,
not
yes.
commodities. We are so precious in terms of improving a business value and a human value. Most importantly, I don't think they see that. So we have
Yeah,
a lot of work to do.
yeah. Hey, what you said about being able to tick off a box. Um, my very first professional job, I got hired because my name sounds Jewish. And I'm going to get ahead of anybody who thinks that this is going to be an anti-Semitic statement. This is not an anti-Semitic statement. But when I showed up, at 6'4", olive complected, with long curly hair, I was not their perception of what Jewish should have been. It's like, and I do actually come from a Jewish background. My grandfather was from the Ukraine and Jewish, so I can identify with that, with that whole plight and everything that goes along with that. But people seem to want to judge the book by the cover and then never want to open it up. It's like, oh, see, I have the book, I tick the box off, I don't need to open it now, I'll just put it away on the shelf. Or maybe since I have the book, it can go in the recycler now because I did what I was supposed to. I bought the book. you know and that's what I like about what you're saying, is like people are inviting people in, but they're not making them feel welcome to actually be there. It's like they still want to push you to the outside, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that what there is that they're staying at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs, right? So if you've ever seen Maslow's hierarchy pyramid,
hmm
at the very bottom is physiological needs, and then there's safety, and then from there on it goes belonging, and then it goes up and up and up. And the higher up you go, the more cerebral you're becoming, the more happy you're becoming, the more peaceful, the more truly successful, these types of things. But I think so many people are stuck in the bottom two rungs of the pyramid of physiological and just safety, and they're stuck in that primitive part of the brain. And instead of controlling their mind, they're letting their mind and chemicals control them. And so instead of just taking that extra step and saying, no, thank you, bodily chemical, I don't need you, I just want to talk to this person and engage, and training their body that it's okay that difference is good, and that this is safe, this is a good situation, they're just stuck in perpetual fight or flight, which has
Yeah.
got to be super freaking stressful.
Oh my God.
But
Yeah.
it's also a choice.
Yeah.
But it's also a choice. And Celia, I want to get your thought on this, because I actually heard recently from someone that I won't reveal their name, but we were talking, and they said that when they were trying to talk to their boss about something that had been said that was offensive, the boss said, well, what you're doing offends me. For all I know, you could be trying to attack me. And so what the boss was receiving was fear, and was then reacting out of fear. And I'm curious, if you have had any shared experience with that, and also B, what you would say then to try to fix the situation.
I think many times people are afraid to say the wrong thing, especially when the George Floyd incident happened and we were working on Black Lives Matters, and I was doing a lot more protest, and I also wanted to learn. And so I asked my friends, what is the right language? What are the right things to say? And it's always a learning part of it. And my friend said, it's okay to make mistakes, Celia. And he was a trans man who was black. And he was educating me about a lot of things that I didn't know about the black community. I read so much. And also, I believe that we need to offer grace to people when they make mistakes. Sometimes we don't because we are very judgmental in terms of I'm getting offended. We are so defensive about our own self. But that doesn't give room for growth. When you give grace, that is growth. When you tell them that I know you misgendered me and I hope it's not intentional, and the person will say, I'm so sorry, I just heard your voice and I was just looking at my counter here, and it happens to me in the grocery store. They don't see me walking in, and they see a woman walking in, and suddenly there's a man's voice, and they're looking at me like, oh, hello sir, what can I do for you? And then they look at me and say, oh, and they don't know what to do, and I give them grace, saying, they didn't understand, probably they are ignorant, or that's what I
Yeah.
think is important for us to feel that way, rather than taking the stance as to, you're attacking me. Fear leads to a lot of the hate, and which can be a part of this. Lack of education is fear, and you want to learn about something. And that's why we need to have these tough conversations where we learn from each other. And one of the things that you have talked about is, why are people feeling that they are attacked? They feel like they are attacked because they are trying to put a defensive mechanism around any conversation. The bosses feel like hiring a trans person is too much for me. Hiring a person with neurodisabilities, oh, I can't handle it. I'm trans and I have neurodisabilities, and I also identify as an Asian Indian. When my resume gets across to the recruiters and they look at my pronouns, they're okay. They're fine. They don't know what those mean, and they're like, Celia, great, amazing experience. Now it actually goes to the hiring manager and they have an interview, and I'm on the screen in a video call. Then what happens is they look at me and they think, I'm not hiring this girl no matter what she is, because it's such a lot of work for me and I have to deal with so much. I'd rather just avoid this. And I have been turned down in so many interviews, and I've even wrote in Huffington Post about how my resume can actually not even get through the ATS system just because of the bias that people have. And they don't understand. The ATS system doesn't understand. It doesn't even put my resume through. So there is always a fear of inclusion, which is such an important thing for us to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. A good point. You keep bringing up the word ignorance. Now, I have a definition between ignorance and stupidity. And ignorance means that the person just doesn't know, and but they could be open and curious to learning.
Mhm.
Stupidity means that they've made up their mind and they ain't just ever you don't doesn't care what you say to them, you will never change their mind. So how do we're gonna unfortunately we're talking about being inclusive, and I'm going to say that we're going to set the stupidity aside, and we're going to focus on the ignorance. How do we teach people if they're open? How do we teach them?
Jen, would you like to go? And I'll.
What I feel called to say is, I think something that's common with all of us is to get to know people, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know Catherine is a big proponent. When we talk about facilitating an environment of inclusion, what I instantly think of, how about just getting to know people, right?
Right.
I mean, get rid of all the labels, and how about let's just start a conversation to get to know one another, right? Because what's what is it, the one of the first lines of defense if you're ever abducted or kidnapped or whatever? I just remember this from 7th grade defense class. Tell the kidnapper your name. Like, try to get to know them. Just start to make yourself human to them,
Humanize
right?
yourself. Yeah.
Right. So to me, that's first step, right? And what that means is both parties can't be defensive. Both parties can't be projecting assumption on the other person, right? So there has to be a neutral energy, right, from both parties, and be open. So like Catherine says, it's about curiosity,
Yeah.
tapping into it, but it's a conscious. We're talking about when you say ignorance versus, right, like you said, conscious versus unconscious. You made up your mind. If you're stupid, you made up your mind and you chose to. Catherine, what's your famous saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? That's just what the first thing that came to mind. So, Celia, to your point, right? To be open and to create relationship, you have to be open to talk to one another and to learn about one another. You come as you are. Accept people as they are, right? But the defensiveness, we get to choose to be offended.
But isn't it okay to be offended?
Mission alignment, Jan. I mean, now you'll remember this because I did this at your event. During one of my presentations, and I've actually done it a couple of times since then, I would say, okay, so we're going to talk about the importance of finding connection in the other person and coming to. And I said, okay, so I'm going to bring up a controversial issue, and don't worry, we're not going to actually discuss it, but I'm just going to use it as an example. I want to talk about the treatment of transgender children, and everyone in the room, Jan will tell you, went like you could just see it. Everybody got so tense, and I said, okay. I said, we can all agree that there's pretty much two sides of this discussion, right? Everybody goes, yep. I said, okay. I said, on the one side, you have people that are concerned about physical well-being of the children and, are we handling things right? And yeah. And some people start nodding. I said, okay. On the other side, you have people who worry about suicidality and children feeling included and children feeling left. Yeah. Nodded. I said, okay. So what I hear is that everybody cares about children. And everybody's like just decompressed in the room. Everybody just went, oh.
Find a commonality, right?
Find the commonality. I said, now you have intention. Yeah, I said you have different ideas of how to get to that point. I said, but the point is that everybody cares about kids and that we want to try to find out how to take care of these children who are going through something that a lot of us cannot relate to. And I said, we're not going to talk again. Like there was an HR event. I said, we're not going to talk about that right now. I said, but this is a good example. I said, did you feel that decompression when you realized that you all had something in common? They said, yes. And I said, aha.
That right there.
Yeah.
Right. You move people from food, water, shelter, right? From defensive, subconscious, reactionary to, oh, okay. Literally left brain to right brain but you have to facilitate that. That's a different teaching somebody no, we're talking about facilitating. So Celia, what I love about your energy and what I feel that you just so represent is helping to facilitate that discussion, right? To bring that commonality to make sure that people feel included. But like you said, the beautiful words, grace, understanding, right? Empathy. Those are such key, not only words, but to facilitate that, it takes it to the next level. And that's what like Catherine's talking about, and what I think we're all talking about. We have to approach inclusivity. You have to create it. If you want to influence change behavior change, you have to be the one to facilitate an environment that creates that. Would you not agree?
Yeah. See, now you've brought up a really good point because there's one thing as children, we are born with the ability to love and to accept. We are taught to close off those doors and form hatreds and offenses to differences. If it gets taught to us that way, by within the home environment based on the fears of whatever the community actually has.
Absolutely. I think it kind of reminds me of an incident that I had faced when I was a child. For the very first time in India, I came out as Celia, and I remember I was in my ninth grade, probably 10 or 11 years old at the time, and I remember wearing a dress and walking outside and hoping that the world would just accept me. And I didn't know at the time that it would be that difficult. And so I went out and I got caught to the security guard next to a construction site. And there were probably like five adults and they were questioning me, asking why I'm there. And I was talking about it. And then the numbers grew and there were women who came and they were watching me. I became a spectacle for them because they have not seen a boy dressed as a girl in that community. Though India is so inclusive, the country is very inclusive, and inclusivity has been there for 4,000 years. Gender spectrum, it was always a gender spectrum. And it's even the gods and the deities that people worship are gender fluid. And there's so much of fluidity in a country, in a
Yes.
religion. And here I am standing there, and they made me feel like trash. They said, "You are such a disgrace, and you need to tell us your dad's name. We are going to tie you up and take you to your dad right now." And I was so scared, and I didn't know what to do. And I spoke in another language. I actually confused them at the time, and the adults were all discussing among themselves as to what can we do with this child. I quickly spoke in another language. I found a small gap in the whole thing, and I ran. They chased. They didn't want to chase me, but the words hurt me so much. And of course, trigger warning for all of you, especially the listeners, is I came home and I was thinking, okay, how can I die? What is the quickest way to die? And there was no Google at the time. But what hit me hard is the words from them to my parents, and my parents living with a child with disability. I thought being trans is a disability, and I didn't want to live. So I tried every possible way to and avenues to kill myself, and I was into self harm. And when I was almost when I was breathing the last part of my lungs, I could remember that I was actually dying, and got so scared that I said, "I'm afraid to die, and I'm also afraid to live." I untied my hands and the bag around my head, and I threw it out, and I started crying, and I said, "How am I going to live in this world?" The reason why I do what I do today is because it's not about bullying. The words, and when
Yeah.
when adults in India in 1970s, nothing has changed in 2024. The same bullying that I faced as a child, I don't want children to go through. Nick's got beaten in the bathroom and curled up and got all the beating lying in the bathroom floor. It kind of reminds me of the stories of so many trans people today who get bullied. And it's here we are not talking about just words, but this is words that has turned into anger, into hate, into violence. And that is the dangerous part of it. And I always try to get some commonalities to connect with people who hate me. And I tell them, I had a conversation with a man and he was telling, "I don't agree with you. This is your lifestyle choice." And, it was over our happy hour. He just went on and on about how much he's so accepting because he's so good. And he is so privileged to accept me and he is giving me grace. And I felt like, what, I don't know what to tell you, but I felt so angry at the same time. I wanted to educate him and I was just sitting and I told him, "Hey, I've listened to, and we were listening to a song which was on the thing, and I was telling, I love this song." And he asked me, "Do you know this song?" I said, "Yeah. I mean, I used to play Dire Straits back in college." And he was like, "Oh, wow, you play music." I said, "Yeah, I play music. I was in the college band." And we kind of connected in such an awkward situation. And you have no idea how it opened up. And he was like,
Yes.
"Hey, don't take me wrong. I'm just trying to learn. I would have said a lot of things." And that's how our conversation parted. And I never got in touch with this person, but at that moment, I humanized it. It was not about issues, but not about lifestyle, not about any argument, but just to say that, hey, you can disagree with me. I'm okay if you disagree with me, but don't disrespect me. That is where we draw the line.
Yeah.
That is where we draw
Yeah.
the line.
We don't need to, we can respect others. Like, everybody has the right to do their own thing there. I mean,
Yeah.
and if we think differently, okay, like it's not going to stop our train from keep on going down. It's not
Yeah.
going
You
to
can't
stop us
harm
from going.
others, and you don't have the right
Yes.
to hinder them or to be disrespectful to
Yeah.
them just because. Yeah, that's no. That's the part that gets me. I just did a post about that. What makes up inclusion is freedom, equality, and respect,
Hmm.
and universal design. That's it. That's simple. Like if we can just get those things. And so I
Yeah.
said, from now on, when somebody tells you that they're against inclusion, say to them, okay, so you don't believe in equality, freedom, and respect. Let's talk about that and why that is. And they're going to argue with you. Yes, I do. No, 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 because that's what you just said, that you don't agree with inclusion, and that's what inclusion is. So let's talk about this more. And I think bringing it back to base issues. And I think, and I'm very curious your the thoughts of you three about this, because I've been seeing a lot of people emboldened to be jerks on very big platforms and in very big ways, whether it's at work, whether it's on social media, all of this. And I don't want to get into my theories as to why. That's a whole other discussion. But I feel like I am seeing that, and I have ideas about how to stop it that all tie back to my all famous saying of fire the jerk, but whether it's from life or in business. But I would be very curious to know your thoughts. Actually, Michael, you're the first one I want to ask. How do you A, are you seeing that too, kind of an uptick? And then B, what are your thoughts as to what to do when somebody actually attacks, whether it's at school or in the workplace?
Okay, so some of the jerks that I'm thinking about are political figures running for office, or
Yes.
they are the prime minister of an entire country.
Mhm.
Okay, so going back to the humanization thing that Jan was talking about, right? One of the major things that South Africa was talking about when they brought about a case for genocide against Israel was dehumanization. They dehumanize everyone who says that they are Palestinian, that they're this human animal, right? Which means that you're less than something. And when we look at the presidential race, we have one campaign that is humanizing, and then we got the jerk. So we have to make sure that we're understanding what the jerk is saying so that we know not to vote for the jerk. Or else you wind up with somewhat of a mess that we have in Canada. Because we hired the jerk.
I think that a lot of people don't pay attention, and I've had people say to me that a personal life doesn't matter in the workplace, and I can give a lot of examples as to why that's
Sit there
not true.
and just go, what the Sam heck is wrong with you people?
We're all the
Right.
same person. But I get asked a lot, how do you tell the difference between a jerk and somebody who can still learn and who just maybe made a mistake? Or like Celia said, they just like in a split second just responded to something just a little off. And the main thing that I go back to is their response to you when you bring it up. Like Celia said, if you bring it up and they say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I don't know where my head was. My apologies, or how can I do better? That type of thing. That's not a jerk. We just had a off moment or something like that. Even if they say, okay, I'm not understanding what I did wrong. Okay, now you're just confused. That's okay. We can work with that. You just don't know whatever it is. That's okay. We can work with that. But if they dig in and they're just stuck on it, right? And even with kids, if you have a kid say, well, this kid's been mean to me and I was being mean back. Okay, maybe you're not a jerk kid. We just need to teach you how to respond better when someone's been mean to you. But when somebody digs in on whatever the thing is that they did that was rude or non-inclusive or whatever it is, then you have the jerk situation. That's how I refer to it.
Right.
And then you must fire the jerk. And I would actually really like to see schools get better at that when it comes to kids. Because if your child is being harmful to other students, they don't belong in school. Here you go. Here's your kid back. Go put him somewhere else. You deal with him.
Exactly, exactly.
And it's the same
You
because
know,
why should the other students be unsafe? It's the same thing in the workplace. And that's what I tell people. They're like, oh, this person has a family to support. Well, they should have thought of that. That's not your responsibility. You have a responsibility to the whole. And if the
yeah.
whole is being endangered by the one, then you remove the one and goodbye to you. So there we go. You knew I was going to work firing into this,
Well,
Jan. You had to have known.
Well, that's why I teed it up. I teed it up.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that's
Cecilia, I'm curious because I
yeah.
know, and I learned so much about giving grace from you, and I learned so much about being kind, which, whoo, that was a journey for me. If it weren't for you and Sajal, I don't know where I would be in that journey. But so I'm curious your thoughts with that, and
Yeah.
is there a point at which you cut it off and just go, okay, there's just no helping you?
Yeah, I think I can give an example. I was sitting in a women's forum, and there was a friend of mine who was talking, and she was a trans person. So there were just two of us in the entire women's forum. We were just sitting there, and we went to our table. And while I was sitting at the table, there were some women around me, and so I was just telling my story. Cecilia, what do you do? And I said, I'm a trans woman. And this woman, a lady, she didn't know what to say. And this is what she said. She said, "Oh, so you're a man with with all the male parts?" And oh, I didn't know that you were like this. And I was like, yes. And well, before I could respond, the women around my table all jumped on her. They literally jumped on her like, how dare you talk like this? You have no idea what you're talking. They just blasted her, and she was so scared. She was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And what I felt at that moment is I can change this, I can handle this in two ways. One is I can join the women and start yelling at her because I have the advantage right now. I can do, or I can just listen to what the woman has to say. So while they were all yelling, I said, I said, I agree with you. I'm a man, and I don't know, I don't identify as a man, but I was born as a man, and I'm a trans woman, and that's why there's a difference. And she said, I'm so sorry if I offended you because this is the first time I'm actually seeing a trans woman, and I'm 68 years old, because she has lived in a community that's so privileged. It's predominantly white in the place where we live, and she has never heard this. And we connected after the meeting. What I did at that time is I could have taken advantage of her, no matter what her background was. There could have been different things, but I just listened to her. And sometimes you listen to people where you can change and you're trying to give grace to them. And I always give them a benefit of the doubt. One time, maybe the second time. The third time, if you say again, the trans women are men, you're out. I mean, I've blocked so many people during the Women's Month, International Women's Month, because when I said how, people like me should be included in these conversations, when women are having those discussions, there were a lot of people who wrote back to me saying, trans women are not women, you're all men. And I was like, okay, you're out. I can't talk to you. And I don't have time to explain to you because you're not going to listen. So there is a limit for what we do. And I think we need to know that when something causes you hurt, that it hurts you, it causes microaggressions to you, you got to stop it because it's not good for your well-being. When someone keeps on telling that you're a tranny or you're a horrible person, you're a man in a dress, you got to stop yourself from that situation. You got to remove yourself from the situation because it is actually hitting you. If it's affecting your well-being, remove yourself from there. And not everybody are trained to do that. And I can take it to some extent because I have to educate people, and I do that naturally because it's part of who I am and I've been a manager. But there is a limit to what we do. There is a limit
Yeah.
to
I'll
grace.
say this for you, Celia. You take it with a large dose of grace.
Yeah.
Some of the things that are thrown at
Grace
you.
might bail out.
um, there are some commonalities between you and I, and it isn't just the pink shirt either. That those of you who have met me in person know that I walk around with at least 3 inches underneath my feet, and and there's some other parts of my fashion that are very very feminine, and it doesn't mean that you're less of a person. It just means that you're more open of a person in a lot of respects. So
Well, I think we need to too, like Jan and I have talked about this, that we need to start adjusting in society how we've determined these different roles. Like, why does a man have to dress a certain way? Or why does a woman have to dress? Or like, why, why limit it ourselves? Why limit ourselves into these roles? Like, why can't a woman be loud and strong and assertive? And why can't a guy be soft and gentle and loving and nurturing? My stay-at-home parent was my father. My mother tried, and then she went nuts and said she had to go back to work. She's a wonderful mother, but she was just like me, very business minded, and that's just like where her mind is. But my dad just ate it up. He liked being with us, and he's very cuddly and very soft, and all of these kinds of things, and still was a professional as well. But he loved taking that time to raise and nurture me, and is a very nurturing, caring human being. And so, I mean, I guess because I grew up with it, it doesn't strike me as so odd. But I think that's something Jan and I have talked about a lot, is like, why are we setting these roles so hard in our society?
okay, I do actually have a question to your question. And it's something that's always baffled me for years. Is like, why is gender so important outside of procreation? Does it matter? Can't, like you said, your dad did a wonderful job of raising a daughter, right?
Yeah.
Does it
And
matter
I don't
if
know.
you're able to
I
do the job? You're able to do the job. What difference does it make if you're male or female?
See, I think that
Right?
goes back to like almost like hiring, right? Like, why does it
Yeah.
matter? Just who cares? Like, who
Just
cares?
whoever
Like,
fits the job. I mean, like,
just do
why
it.
do we?
It's fine. And I have friends who are biologically male who identify as such, who look better in dresses and heels and makeup than I do. And it's just, I mean, and that's how they like to dress, and that's okay. And I don't, and what's funny is, Celia, you said that you've had people misgender you and call you male. I have always read you as female. Isn't that interesting? From the first time that we met, I just immediately, my body and my mind processed you as female. And so I don't know why that's different. That hasn't always been the case when I've met people in the transgender community, but that has been the case with you. So I don't know. Maybe it's just about manifestation. I don't know, but we need to all relax and just not worry about it.
I think I told Celia this story, that I was at a bus stop one time, and I was heading to work, and this woman, she questioned me for a half-hour wait for a bus, and at the end of the wait, she said, "Well, you should come to our church because we're full of people just like you." And I was like, I'm definitely not
Other
going
humans?
to that
I was
church.
going to say, that's the first thing I thought of was other humans, or like what?
What does that mean exactly?
That is not an invitation.
Serious. That's not a good invitation, bro. Just saying.
No.
Celia would advise you not to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
There are churches that say they're open and affirming. That's probably where it's like, oh, we don't discriminate. That's the first thing.
Right.
When you talked about language when we started, the first thing I heard from a HR when I said I'm a trans woman, because every time people call me and say, "Can I speak to Celia Daniels?" When I answer the phone, hello, and let's say, "Can I speak to Celia Daniels?" I'm said, "This is she." Be like, oh, okay. So because they, in the mind, they are hearing a woman's name and a man's voice, or a gender neutral voice, and immediately they try to relate it, because we are so much into gender and binary. We are kind of, as a human race, we have taken that into our consideration. I'm a science buff. So this is the first question I ask my audience. If we have an alien who lands on, wherever they are, and what is the first question the alien is going to ask in the middle of Times Square? What is that alien going to tell when he looks around and looks at us? What is the first thing he would say? He would say is, hey, human beings, or hey, earthlings. He's not going to refer to his, hey, you black man, or you
Yeah.
trans woman. How are you? Because the alien doesn't know all that. They don't know anything. And it's so important for us to live in a planet, belong in a planet where we humanize, not demonize. We humanize, not politicize. And these are things created by people just to keep them into boxes. And actually, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow in one of my talks. But I want to also talk about gender. You brought that up, Catherine, as to why, as human beings, we have gender in everything. Why can't my dad be this way, my mom be this way? My mom was exactly the same. My mom was very busy. My dad was very nurturing and nice. My dad was a businessman too. I think gender is broken down into 5 categories, especially when you look at it as gender unicorn. They say this: the gender at birth, like what you're born, and then how you identify in your gender and how you express in that gender, and then your attraction in that gender, physical attraction, and then romantic attraction. So there is a lot within the gender sequence that kind of defines you, not just male, female. So this is what you need to do. You need to wear pink, you need to wear blue. In India, pink is common for men. Problem. So these colors, all what you see in this country, it's so clear. I remember wearing a purple dress before my purple shirt before my transition while I was Daniel to the office. My boss was an American. He asked me, "Hey, you look so flamboyant today, Daniel." And as I was like, "What do you mean?" I'm wearing, this is formal. I'm wearing a formal shirt and also a formal trouser. And then he kind of smiled at me in a very sarcastic way, and I didn't know what he meant. And then he said, "Oh, you know about California. This is California, so you're okay." And I was like, I didn't get what he said. And then it hit me. Oh, he means I'm wearing a purple shirt because that's relating to either a queer community, or you're trying to tell me I'm feminine just because of a shirt. And I was so uncomfortable. That lunch hour, I went back home and I changed, and my wife was at home. She was asking, "What's wrong with the shirt?" I said, "My boss has got a problem." And she was like, we live in that kind of world that tries to create this inclusion or exclusion. They try to create an inclusion, and they also pretend like you're included, but you're actually excluded. And that's what I talk about. Is inclusion actually creating exclusion? In some of these scenarios, we love people with disabilities, but we didn't know that you are neurodivergent. We didn't know that your cardiovascular issue is actually belonging to this category. We try to create all these boxes even within an inclusion parameter, which
Yeah.
is so important for us.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
Hey,
very, very true.
okay. Hey, everybody, we're starting to run out of time, and I know we're having fun, but let's let's wrap up with maybe some hard solutions. Maybe some things that people can walk away with that they can insert into their lives that will help make things maybe a little bit better. Why don't we start with Jan?
Solutions. I just exactly what Celia said and what we've been saying all along, except humans. If we start using the term human and take away these labels, see people, other human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to program your brain. It's up to us as individuals to do the work. We can't make somebody change. Okay. So we need to get people to, want to look at this whole paradigm differently, right? And how we look at one another. Accept people for who they are and want to be curious to learn more about them.
Yeah.
That's it. And curiosity. Learn how to break your ego mechanism, respond in curiosity, and always show everyone respect. Past that, come find one of us. We're glad to help you figure it all out.
One final solution, Celia.
I think, as what Jan and Catherine they were talking about, it's important for us to also build allyship. because allyship is very important in terms of building and understanding each other as a human being. So I want to end by saying that allies is basically ALLIES, acknowledge your privilege, listen to the community, learn to unlearn, initiate and instigate tough decisions and conversations, educate yourself and educate others, and last is support by being involved. That is ALLIES. It's easy way to remember, and it's always wonderful to have this in the back of your minds when you're working with different intersectional identities. So
Yeah.
that's my
So,
my
hey, everybody, thank you for joining us. And my final thought is, if we just all learn to accept each other as human beings and as loving human beings, that we might end a lot of these problems and just have a better way of going about things, and we don't have to worry about some of the crazy economic wealth gap things, generation gap things, that because we're so accepting of what the other person has to offer, and we see the beauty inside of everyone. All right, thanks again, everybody, and we will see you the next time we have a pro love and diversity talk.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.